Hey guys, this is Nia. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I finally unboxed my Holbein watercolor set. I'm also going to be drying them in pans to make a watercolor palette, and I'm also going to swatch them for a color chart. This one is going to be quite a long video because I included the process I took to make the palettes, but I hope you guys enjoy looking at the different colors. I bought two empty pencil cases, which is made out of plastic, but one only fits around 24 half pans. So I got two of them, and I'm thinking of getting more half pans to mix some colors or something, but I haven't done it yet. And I put 15 each, which makes 30 colors for the watercolor set that I have. Anyway, I want to know which color is which, so I decided to name all of the half pans, and this is really the boring part of this whole thing since it doesn't really involve any colors, it's just a lot of writing. So I'm just going to speed through this because it did take a while. And basically I took out my oil-based markers, so it's really hard to rub off, and I just wrote down according to the list that I have in front of me. I've never made watercolor palettes before, so I didn't really know what to expect, but someone did tell me to dry them in layers to make the process much quicker. For each layer, it took me 1 day, or basically I left it overnight to dry in an air-conditioned room. I did around 2 to 3 layers each. I did the first 2 layers on camera, and the third one I did it off camera, so I wouldn't be included in this video, but basically the process is exactly the same for each layer. After I filled the first color, I decided to organize my pans according to the order of my watercolor set to make the flow much easier for me instead of having to look for the pan one by one. On the first section of the set, I realized that I couldn't get the paint to settle in smoothly as well as I thought it would. I left out a lot of empty, untouched areas, and I thought that filling these up in layers with all the holes would be a little bit difficult. So towards the end of the first section, I decided to look for a needle, and I tried to move the paint around to fit the edges and to create a smoother surface. But as you can probably tell, because I've left out some of the colors already, some of the yellow paints were getting a little bit thick and dry. But I just continue on with the rest of the colors this way, and I found that this method really helped me to get much smoother surface than if I were to just squeeze out the paint as is. I learned this method from making royal icing cookies. It's basically the same idea of flooding a cookie. It's a little bit off topic, but if you bake, you would probably know what I'm talking about. I noticed that each of the color had very different consistencies, and some colors look much darker than what the actual color would be. I noticed that the thicker consistency ones are the colors that are a little bit more pastel, which I think has a little bit of white pigment on it, and I guess that this would also make this certain paint opaque. The darker paints seem to be a little bit more runny, and I basically made the assumption in the beginning that the darker paint would most likely be the more transparent colors. This turned out to be true when I swatched them towards the end. To bring out the colors on the pan, I know that you would have to have quite a bit of white pigment. Even in acrylic paint that I've used, especially for purple colors, it just looks black when you squeeze it out of the tube, but to bring out the purple you have to add a little bit of the white paint. I really like the bright pastel colors on the pan. It looks really vibrant and pretty, but in the end I think I much prefer the transparent colors because they are very, very vibrant when you paint and they just look amazing. But I know that looking at the palette by itself, it would be a little bit confusing to realize which color is which, since some of them just look so dark even though they produce such nice bright colors when you activate them with water. The cobalt violet light, which is the light purple color I'm holding here, I find it's a little bit strange in nature even when I paint with it. Maybe it's a little bit granulating and I find it a little bit odd. I haven't really been able to appreciate granulating watercolors yet. Each one of these colors, when they dry off, they also give off a different sheen. They're mostly very shiny, but like the light purple that I was talking about before, it has more of a matte look compared to the other colors. And I'm not sure if this has anything to do with the granulating effect or not, but yeah, I just want to mention that I noticed that each one of these colors, even when they dry off, give off a different kind of sheen. I think it has something to do with the texture and the consistency of each color, but the purple that I was talking about before looks much more matte compared to the other colors. Maybe because it has the granulating effect. I'm really new to this Holbein paint, and it's the first time I've ever gotten my hands on an artist grade watercolor set. So if there's something that anyone would like to share with me or to let me know, you can leave it in the comment section, and I would really love to have a little read. So here are the colors that I've got. This is the first layer of paint, and I left this out to dry in an air-conditioned room to help the drying process. As you can tell, when they're dry, the paint shrinks quite a little bit, leaving more air pockets and even some cracks on some of the colors, but this is fine because I'm going to do another layer to fill in those gaps created on the first layer. I'm just going to repeat the same process for the second layer. This time I'm also trying to push in some of the paint down where I have the gaps from the first layer. I used my needle to help move the paint, and I think in the end it worked quite nicely. When I was filling up the second layer, I tried to fill it to the tip of the pan, but because it shrinks when it dries, it was a little bit concave in each of the pan. That's why I did a third layer after this, but I also didn't include it in this video. It would just drag a little bit too long, and I only did some of the colors, not all, because some colors didn't shrink as much as the others. Or if it's like a black color, I know that I don't use too much black, so I didn't fill up on the third layer. I decided to include this part even though it's making the video very long, but I think that it would look really satisfying for some of you, so I didn't cut it in the end. Overall, this whole process took me around 3 hours in total, filmed on separate days, but I really enjoyed it because it feels so different to anything that I've ever used before. Anyway, I'll leave you guys to watch this part, and I will get back to you where I'll be making the color swatches.
And now we have constructed a square.
This is how my colors ended up looking after I left it out to dry. For the third layer, it looks much more full, but as you can tell, the black is a little bit more concave than the rest of the colors because I didn't add the final third layer to that. I've decided to divide the colors in terms of the temperatures, so warm and cool colors, and I set them all out in terms of the order of colors before I put them in the container that I have, which is this empty pencil case. And after I'm happy with the order of colors, I just put them all in. I've also made a small swatch paper that I can stick on top of the palette, so I have reference whenever I'm going to paint with it. This is really useful because, as I mentioned before, some of the colors look much darker in the pan compared to when I use it to paint. I've also written down the names of the colors and also placed 2 strokes with waterproof art liners so I can check the opacity or the transparency of each color. Instantly, when I was swatching the colors, the paint feels so good. When I put the water on the paint, it doesn't take too long at all for the colors to activate, and it still keeps its really rich nature. It feels like it's freshly squeezed out of the tube, but because of this, I know that I will end up finishing the paint much quicker. For the warm colors, I really like the Sepia, Rose Madder, Crimson Lake, and Quinacridone Opera. It really stands out to me. I really love the transparency of the colors because I think it really gives a different type of richness that makes watercolors special. Originally, I thought that the Quin Opera would act differently because it dries off a little bit different, more like the violet purple that I mentioned earlier. It looks more matte in nature compared to the others, but when I was swatching it, it still feels really good and a lot of the pigment came out, and it's also very smooth. I'm really glad I bought this set because I think it's a good introduction to knowing which types of watercolors I will be looking out for in the future if I end up buying individual tubes. I know for sure now that I would much prefer the really transparent colors over the opaque because I feel like you can make opaque colors with gouache paint anyway, and I think this way it really helps me to distinguish the texture and the feel of the paint that I like. The cooler colors actually stand out to me more than the warm colors though, because I really like looking at cooler colors. I like the variety of the earthy greens and also the blues. My favorite would probably be the olive and the sap green because it's really rich and very transparent. I think that they would look great for leaves or plants. There are a lot of attractive colors too in this palette, like the pastel colors. I really like looking at them on the pan. It really makes the palette itself look like a really nice set, but I don't think I would use those colors that often. Usually I much prefer using more earthy and natural tones, but we'll see how I can incorporate them in the future. I'm really looking forward to paint with this new set. I think I'm going to try to paint with my normal student grade paper first and see if it would make any difference. I know that a lot of people say the paper matters more than the paint. I'm pretty sure that's true. I think the artist grade paint is a bit easier to handle though because you can feel it just from swatching how easily it activates, and this would make the experience of painting much more pleasant. I've also got my hands on arches paper not too long ago, so I'm also going to use this paint on the arches and see how the paper would greatly affect the application of the paint. After the paint dries out, I just use double tape to help secure the paper on the palette, and I'm finally done with the set. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me put the palettes together. I know that it's a bit of a longer video compared to what I usually post, but hopefully you found it interesting or satisfying to watch. Just as a last minute announcement, I want to tell you guys that I've just published my new Skillshare class on how to paint a galaxy fox. This class is just under an hour long, and I will link the class in the description box down below, so if you're interested in learning, please take a look. Anyway, thank you guys for watching till the end, and I will see you at the next one. Bye!